So this is actually a picture of my son here, and he's at the Monroe County Library. He is a preschooler, and they have these really great computers all around the library that allows students to engage in content exploration. What this means is this basically means that students can explore knowledge, practice knowledge with the feedback of the computer, so they can do it on their own. This is a touch screen. This one's Dora the Explorer. I think he's seeing different words in Spanish and he has to organize them into different categories. To pay no mind to the fact that he has the mouse backwards, but he's actually learning information as he goes through. And there's a lot of different ways that you can do this as a teacher, and you can use technology to help you. But before we start getting into that, I want to talk a little bit about the difference between tools and tasks. So a tool can be basically any kind of technology, or it could be a non-technology too. But since this class focuses on technology, I'm going to talk primarily about that. So a tool might be, for example, PowerPoint. And you can use PowerPoint for a lot of different things. You can use it like I'm doing it right now as a teacher to provide you with information on a particular topic area. You can assign your students to create a PowerPoint to show you that they know information on a particular topic, like the book, like a book report, or any kind of historical element. Or if you're doing science, you can assign them, a PowerPoint talking about the different parts of a cell, or whatever it might be. You can use PowerPoint in a lot of different ways. Now, a task is, again, something different, but that is where you're assigning your students to do something, right? So a task, for example, might be, I want my students to learn about Indiana state history. Now, I can do that a lot of different ways, right? So I can have them watch a video. I can have them explore a website. I could have them do a web quest where I'm taking them to different websites. I could have them go to the Encyclopedia Britannica website. I could have them watch videos. I could have them interview a local historian. There are a lot of different things that you can do here for a task, and you just have to figure out which tools are going to best support that particular task. And content exploration is really how do you get your students to learn new knowledge, right? Or any kind of knowledge. How do you get them to obtain the information? So you can do this a lot of different ways. First of all, exploring new knowledge. So if they have not learned the concept before, how do you use technology to help support that, to help introduce them to new ideas? The next would be reviewing knowledge. So how do you get them to, once they've learned information, to go back over that information and say, okay, do I have this? What do I need to know more about? And lastly, the applying of knowledge, meaning like, all right, so I've learned this math concept, I need to practice, or I need to figure out how this works, or I've learned addition, how do I do story problems now to actually apply this in a real world context? Okay, so that's those three different areas are different ways for building knowledge, and that's again the purpose of using technology. So let's talk about some different examples here. The first one for exploring new knowledge, a lot of people have used textbooks. There's actually some really fantastic open textbooks that you can use so that your school doesn't have to pay for them. So CK12 is fantastic. They have textbooks available for all different subject areas. So that would be a way to explore new knowledge, or having your students do some kind of a science lab. That would be another new way for them to gain new knowledge of a particular concept. So let's say we're talking about acids and bases and pH levels. So doing a science lab, I can, as a student, understand that information a little bit better. The next one would be like reviewing knowledge. And what do I mean by reviewing knowledge? That would be like flashcards. So now that I've learned all of my different foreign language words, I can flip different things over and understand like what is a different information. And then Cliff Notes, hopefully if you use Cliff Notes the right way, you didn't do it in place of the book. You did it as a way to help you review the knowledge from the book. So I read the book, I understand the book, but I want to know what are the different themes that were coming out. So Cliff Notes might be able to help you review that particular information. And then finally, applying new knowledge. So foreign language practice. So now that I've learned different verbs and how to conjugate them, maybe I want to engage in some practice with someone so that I can practice those particular foreign language concepts. And as I said before, like math word problems. So how do I actually take that information and then apply it. So those are examples of exploring new knowledge, reviewing knowledge, and applying knowledge. So when you're going through and selecting a particular tool, we've already talked a lot about standards. So you've already seen here's a standard, for example, for counting shapes. Or looking at shapes and comparing and contrasting shapes. And then our objective that we came up with from that might be compare and contrast shapes. And then finally, there are some tasks that come out of that. So my first task for my students is I want them to be able to compare shapes with real life objects. So what are some different ways that I can do that? Well, the first way that I can do that is I can do that with PowerPoint, right? So I can have pictures of different real world shapes, and then I could be comparing those to other, to actual shapes. I could be comparing those to drawings. Another way might be through the smartboard. So many of you have had experience with interactive whiteboards or smartboards. Maybe you had the Promethean board at your school at some point in time. And you can take pictures of those and actually have students draw on top of those. So here are two different options for tools, but here was the task. So notice how things would be quite different here, right? So if I had the smartboard, I would have pictures and have students tracing and drawing around them. Whereas if I had the PowerPoint, I was just going through and clicking, it maybe isn't quite as engaging as a smartboard. So you have to think about how long do you have for, this particular task. What's kind of your students' ability levels. So you really have to think about what you're picking and why you're picking it. Again, one of the most important parts of this class is to be thinking all the time about what technology to use and why you in particular want to use that tool. So let's go back to content exploration. Here we have all the different ways that it could be used. It's just least complex to most complex. I do not expect you to remember all of these terms. It's just, again, a great way for you to be able to talk about it. So let's talk about the first one, which is reference, exploring knowledge, and this is the most basic. So this is where you would just send your students to a website. It might have some images or animation. There's no real significant interaction. So if you send your students to a YouTube video or having them read through ebooks, so this would be a way in which you would have students explore knowledge, right? So maybe they haven't learned the term before or they haven't learned the information before. It's a good way to introduce them, but there's no significant interaction. The next example is drill and practice. So this would be a review of knowledge. And it allows for feedback here. So this would be kind of like with flashcards kind of style or animation style, basically where you enter in kind of some kind of feedback where they're asking you, okay, what's 3 times 4? And you enter in 12, and then you get like, yes, yay, you did it, or no, keep working on it. The next one is a tutorial, which incorporates exploring new knowledge and reviewing said knowledge. So the Khan Academy does a really great job with this, where it provides information and then it has a test at the end. Another one of my favorites is actually Front Row, educational games. And many of you have probably played Oregon Trail or some kind of Sesame Street game, or maybe like these active science challenge, like Energy Challenge is fantastic. Right, so different fun ways. So basically, you make decisions as you go through, and depending on those decisions, it ends up with some kind of a result. So the learning experience would be hopefully like you understand civic involvement. For Oregon Trail, it would be hopefully that you understand historical context and decisions. For active science games, like where we actually challenge you to how much energy does it take you to run the fastest, hopefully that you're looking at different sorts of food and how different foods give you energy. So more sugar gives you a burst of energy, but then you crash, so that kind of information. A simulation, which is extremely popular, especially in science, so that we can understand what's going on in the background. This helps us kind of understand what's going on in either physical phenomena that are difficult to explore on your own, or allows you to do some sort of a simulation. So simulations are fantastic. This would be another example of a simulation. So a lot of schools have turned to frog dissection simulations. This is cheaper, a little bit less disgusting for some. So you actually go through and you can peel back different pieces. We may show you this on the iPad. It's one of the apps that's kind of fun to use, where you actually peel them back and explore all the different parts of the frog. The last one is open-ended tools, and it's basically the tool can be manipulated to show a lot of different goals, a lot of different things that you can explore. So those are the different types of tools that you can use for content exploration. I hope that that has been a good introduction.